6:25 in Trinidad and Tobago. Good to have you with us on this Thursday morning. Well, with several changes in the way we live and do business in society due to the impact of COVID-19, many persons may be experiencing different psychological effects, including the fear of uncertainty. Well, to help us to understand the issues associated with human behavior in a time of COVID-19 and to provide some sort of coping mechanism during this pandemic, we're joined by Hanif Benjamin, President and Chief Executive Officer and Clinical Therapist and Clinical Traumatologist. He joins us via Zoom. Mr. Benjamin, good of you to join us once more. Thanks very much for taking the time.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to join you, even though it's via Zoom as well.
Indeed. And we have quite a bit of ground to cover, I'm sure, seeing that we're talking about the many different issues associated with coping with COVID-19 beyond the immediate health concerns. But let's talk about the psychology of it. You take us through. You start in whichever direction you'd like to go.
Thank you, Fazir. And quite importantly, the topic today is so on point because we must understand that in order to beat this, we must change our behavior. In my research over the many years in relation to pandemics and things like this, the closest we came to, at least in my lifetime, would have been SARS, because the last pandemic would have been over 100 years ago, well, actually 100 years to date. But when you look at the behavior movement of other things like Ebola and SARS, what beat those things were changing of behavior. Now, we change behavior over time. And in order for us to do that, we need time. However, we are living in a time where we are asked to change our behavior right now. What does that mean for us? And so in the first instance, I want to look at it from a traumatic perspective. So if you could pull up the first slide for me, I'm not sure if we have it. If not, I could share my screen.
I think what is happening, Mr. Benjamin, we were having some technical challenges in getting them across to us overnight. So I do apologize for that. If we do get them eventually, I'll notify you. But you can read from what you have in front of you.
Can I share my screen?
I'm not sure that we can, but if you can share it, but go ahead and read from it because I don't want us to deprive our viewers of the information.
Right. So when I look at trauma, I look at a couple things under the umbrella of trauma. And the first thing I wanted to examine is risk analysis and whether or not we understand the risk that is involved in COVID-19 and the recovery of COVID-19. And I put fear, worry, and panic under that risk analysis. What makes us change our behavior? What makes us want to change our behavior? The other thing that we need to look at, and it is, you mentioned it earlier, you had a segment in relation to business, but the economic implication for COVID-19 is also a major traumatic fear for most, whether it is a personal or a business or a country, because we are hearing the Honorable Prime Minister saying the cost for another lockdown will be detrimental on society. For an individual, whether or not you will remain with your pay, whether you will have a job at the end of this. And for a business owner, what is this lockdown or what would COVID do to you? Because even if we don't go into a general lockdown, people may recuse themselves from going out and partaking in certain things. And so the financial implication is also critical. Fazir, the other area that I wanted to look at under the trauma umbrella is understanding the message. And I am wondering if people are understanding the message the way the message is intended to be received. Because there's seemingly a disconnect between the messages that is being put out there and how people are receiving this message. And we see that with the lack of changing of a behavior. And so we will examine the behavioral change as well. And then we want to talk about cognitive behavior change, whether or not people have the capacity, the ability, or the acumen to, from a cognitive perspective, to understand what is going on. You see, Fazir, we in Trinidad and Tobago has been spared many things to the point where we start calling God a Trinity. And so we have not experienced a lot of traumatic incidences over time like other places. And that helped build a level of resiliency, mental resiliency, physical, spiritual. And so we are fighting something, a disaster that we literally cannot see, we cannot feel, we cannot taste, we cannot touch. And therefore, our response to it might at times not be linking to our cognitive understanding of what it is. Because sometimes, Fazir, we need to experience something to know how to respond to it. But we are responding to something that we have never had before. And so cognitively, there isn't the link happening. And so we have to now teach people how to. And Fazir, I must tell you and tell all the viewers and listeners, this is a teachable moment this morning. So get your copybook, your pen, your pencil, because you're going to have to take some notes. And then, Fazir, I want to talk about the cultural analysis of this. We are asking a people who are huggy, touchy, feely, kissy. Long time I ain't see her. Let me take a drink. Let me lime. We are telling people who are accustomed to socially being in one another's presence all day, all night, to now be separated. We are saying to people that we can no longer lime and hang out. That is who we are, and that is what we do. Just take, for instance, the amount of party, carnival, post-carnival, pre-carnival. We are a cultural people. And so we are saying to people to just stop this. So see, what does all of this tell us? And I put all of this under the traumatic umbrella. I really wish we could get this up on the screen. But I put all of this under traumatic umbrella because all of these things impact how we survive. All of these things impact how we respond to COVID-19. All of these things impact how we change our behavior. I'll pause at this point.
Yeah, and indeed, I do apologize because we weren't able to put up your slides this morning. But I think it's important that you take us through and as you said, it's a moment for us to take our notes and so on. And again, as we'll remind you at the end of the show, in case you missed today's show live, you can catch it at 1 o'clock. You can catch it on the website as well, so you won't miss out on the opportunity. But before you continue, and you know I always have to interject with a question and so on. But I don't want to derail you from the fundamental message that you're getting across. By the way, we'll take a break as well in the next few minutes, probably at around 6:40 to fulfill some commercial obligations, and then we'll continue all the way to 7 o'clock. But the issue is, Mr. Benjamin, is it that we are? Can we describe ourselves as being unwilling to accept reality? That because until these numbers started to spike so noticeably over the last 2 or 3 weeks, you had bunks of people all the time saying we don't have no COVID here, that this is just a conspiracy, and people line in as normal. Even now, people trying to, it's almost as if many of us refuse to accept a reality. Yes, you said quite correctly, we can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't taste it, we can't see the imminent threat, but the evidence is there, yet we refuse to accept it. Why?
Fazir, listen, talk to the how they call these people, the emergency response. And Fazir, it's the same reason year after year after year we say to people, you need to get ready for a hurricane. But because we have not been inundated with hurricane like other places, we tend to not be prepared. We have developed a mentality where if it really has not affected me personally, I will not give a two hoots about it. And that mentality we see over flood, over hurricane, earthquake, whatever it is. Because again, I want to go back to the behavior analysis of this. In order for somebody to, let's take a child for example, a child who is probably behaviorally dysregulated. In order to change this child behavior, you have to help the child understand why the behavior that they are portraying is harmful, disrespectful, or whatever. We have to show them what the linkage is with this behavior. And Fazir is the same concept here. We are not seeing, or we did not see the nature of what happened in America. And even though we are seeing it on television daily, it still did not resonate with us because from a mental perspective, we don't think it was coming to me. But now Fazir, you're seeing a spike in anxiety and panic and depression and all of these things because now it is coming home. People who I heard in the first instance disparaging the government, disparaging the CEO, oh, they are lying, it's a conspiracy. Now you're calling me to tell me you are worried and panic and you don't know what's going to happen. And the reason why is that because two of your friends was now diagnosed with COVID. So only because people who you know or close to home has now been touched by this, you are now feeling the effects. And so it is important for us to help people to understand their individualized response, individualized responsibility to what this is. And so during this session here, I have created what I call the circle of influence or the circle of control, much like what the CMO and they speak about in terms of your secondary, tertiary contacts and how you can spread. Today, I want to show Trinidad and Tobago how we can reduce flatline this thing by our individual and our circles of control.
Okay, so what we shall do, because as I said, I wanted to give you every opportunity to take us through this tutorial as effectively as possible, even with the challenge that we don't have those slides that we could show on your behalf, but you could talk us through it. Let's take that break now. It's 6:36 in Trinidad and Tobago. We're speaking with Hanif Benjamin in dealing with the emotional, psychological, and other challenges associated with COVID-19. And as we head to the break, let's remind you of the COVID-19 hotlines for those of you who may need access to information. Again, the hotlines 877-9355, 800-9355, the ERHA 877-3742, the SWRHA 877-9742, and the Tobago hotline is 800-4325. We'll return to our dialogue with Hanif Benjamin right after this break. 6:40 coming up towards 6:41 in Trinidad and Tobago. So let's return to our dialogue with clinical traumatologist Hanif Benjamin to continue his lesson for us this morning as far as coping with the emotional, psychological challenges of COVID-19. Mr. Benjamin, please continue.
Thank you, Fazir. Now I'm going to head into, as I said, what I call the circle of influence or the circle of control. Now I want to put it out there that this is non-scientific, nor is it a research yet, although it will be developed into that. And I really did look at the research on how they treated with SARS.
Okay, before you continue, let me just, if you will allow me to interrupt you, I think we do have the slides up now. So the one you would like us to put up now, is it the one called Circle of Control? Is that the correct one?
Yes, that's the one that I'm on now.
All right, so let's put that up. So let's make sure we have that up. Okay, right? So there it is. So please go ahead and go through your narrative.
Thank you so much. And so, as I was indicating, I did research on the SARS and the behavioral analysis of that. I also look at the cognitive behavior therapy, motivational interviewing, rational emotive behavior therapy, as well as Uri Frenbrenner and the ecological model. So that was the first slide. So if we could go to the second slide, which is called, this one on the screen here is what I was referring to as the trauma and the trauma impact that we're looking at. Right? So the second slide is what we're going to go to now, which is the circle of influence.
Okay, so the second one, the one you want us to go to now is headline Circle of Influence. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's go to that one now. We'll put it up for you. I'll tell you when it's up. There it is. Go right ahead.
Right. Thank you, Fazir. And the reason why I looked at this, especially in the context of what we're dealing with, and so I wanted to start with the individual, me, you. What does COVID mean to me? What does it mean to me from a risk perspective? So you have to look at now, this is it here, thank you, it's up. You have to look at the individual, my individual responsibility. What exactly is my responsibility in this COVID-19? What does this responsibility mean for me from a risk identification perspective? What level of risk COVID is to me? And that is COVID coming to me. For example, if you are within a certain age bracket, within a certain health condition, you know if you contract COVID, their possibility might be death, right? Or serious illness. So you need to start to understand COVID from a personal, responsible problem. Now you have to talk about, what about me to others? What do I do that can now impact others? And so you need to look at risk mitigation. What can I do to mitigate these risks? What can I do to ensure, now that I know what are my individual risk, my individual perspective, what must I do? So this begins our circle of influence, circle of control. Because Fazir, just like the CMO talks about, don't gather this, that, we all operate with circles of control. Whether that circle is your immediate house, your circle is work, your circle is church, your circle is party, whatever your circle might be, we have to understand what happened within those circles. You see, Fazir, this is leading to behavior change. And remember, I tell Trinidad and Tobago to write with me as we go along. And so the first thing we're looking at is the individual. So you need to write down all of your risk factors, internal and external risk factors. What does that mean to me? Now, when we go to the second level of your control, so you may be living with a family. What does this mean for your family? Because now your family become a circle of control. How do you manage this circle of control in your family? For example, is it that you are working? Is it that you have an elderly grandmother or a mother at home? Is that person susceptible? Do you have small children at home? Are they susceptible? What does it mean? So what you are actually doing, or what I'm asking you to do, is examine your circles and put your risk down. your primary contacts, the risk analysis. Because what this will do is this will lead you to now understanding the type of risk you should take. I remember the minister said, do you need to go to this place? Do you need to do this? And because we are not feeling and seeing this pandemic in the way that we will see a flood or a hurricane, we must now will ourselves. We must now work ourselves. For example, for you, people talk about you need to wear masks just like how you wear underwear. And I debunk that because you have been wearing underwear since you were a baby. It was being put on for you and then you start putting it on. You will run out the house and forget to carry a mask, but you will not run out the house and forget to put on an underwear. For the simple reason is that is something that we have inculcated over the many years. And so we have to begin to train ourselves by understanding our risk, understanding our circle, and protecting those circles. And so the circle again can be home, it can be school, it can be work. Wherever you go, you have to ask yourself a couple questions. Am I in control of the circle? So you are in control of your home, you are in control of your family, you are in control of yourself. So you create a plan to protect yourself there. Now, if you go to the office, do you have control over your office? In an office, you have 4 people. What is your span of control there? Is it that I wear my mask all day? Is it I take off my mask? Do I or can I? Those are the kind of questions that I'm asking you to ask yourself as you lead to behavior change. Because if you understand the amount of control you have within a circle, then you can begin to mitigate the level of risk within that circle for zero. And so when you go to work, you will know that based on the ergonomics of the office, I am keeping on my mask all day. I cannot afford to take out my mask because I know my risk to my immediate circle is family is great. I know my risk to my grandmother, to my mother is great. So I change my behavior in order to protect myself. And if you go down, you could go down to level 2, level 3, level 4, but you could create your circle based on where you go. So one person might have 1 circle, 3 circles, 4 circles. You see, for you, what this is helping us to do is map where you go, understand the importance of going where you go. For example, the supermarket is a circle. Do you need to go to the supermarket every day? Do you need to go to the supermarket every week? Can you avoid going there by ordering the stuff? Can you make a list so when you go once? Then what do you do when you come home with this? Do you clean your goods? Do you wipe down your goods? All of these things are part of your circle. I'll pause there for your interjection there and put questions.
Yes, and there are a number of issues that are tied in it, but I don't want to deprive you of the opportunity if there's some more important information you want to give us. So please go ahead, because just remember that we're going up to the top of the hour, which means we probably have another 10 minutes or so with a bit of a push. So you can go ahead, and then if we have the time and I can pose some questions, we might decide, depending on I'll liaise with my producer to see if we can take some time after 7 o'clock, because we had allocated to do a COVID-19 update, but I think we all know the numbers anyway, so there's no need to repeat those numbers. So we could probably take it all the way to the top of the hour, and then I'll come in with some questions when we come back after the news. So please continue.
So for zero, in order for me to continue, put up the other slide. Let me show you real quickly.
Okay. Which slide is this one? Which headline do you want?
Safety plan.
The safety plan. Let's put up the safety plan for you so that we can talk through this. Go right ahead, Mr. Benjamin.
Wonderful. Now, for zero, if you notice the first slide, we talk about the whole traumatic concept, because we cannot find a plan without acknowledging the mental state of people. We cannot move forward without understanding the cultural nuances. We cannot move forward without understanding the risk analysis. And the second slide, we spoke about your circles of influence. And so that is important for you to understand self, to understand risk, to understand your circles, to understand your power of control. Because ultimately, you have to keep yourself safe. And so wherever you go, you must create your power of safety. Now, if you were to look at the other slide, right, which is the creation of the safety plan. I'm not sure if we have that up yet.
Yes, we have it up. We have the creation of the safety plan up.
Good. And so for here, I spoke about the plan because what I have recognized, in order to change a behavior and to change a behavior quickly, we must have repetitive, constant practice and information. In order for us to change our behavior, we must be doing the things over and over. And just like in a natural disaster, or the PM asks us to create a plan where you're going, how you're calling, who you're going by, who you're going to shelter, that the reason why we do that in disaster is because if you have a plan, it is easier for you to follow. And for Zir, as a field traumatologist, a lot of what I'm talking about is taken from a disaster model, because this is a disaster and we need to treat it as such. And so having identified your risk, having identified your circle, having identified all of those things, the questions we need to ask ourselves in creating this plan: should I, should we, can we, should we? And so you need to, as an individual within your household, determine where you go, when you go, how you go. What do you need to do when you go? What do you need to say when you go? How you need to go? For see, those things are critical, because I tell you this, you need to limit your movement. You need to limit your movement to point A and to point B. And the reason why that is also important is, should you become infected, it will be easier for the epidemiology team to trace your movement. And so you have to be deliberate for Zero in how you move, where you move, and why you move. You have to be deliberate about your environment and what happened in your power of control. And so when you look at the plan, you are creating a plan for everyone within your household or your circle of influence. And this safety plan, while it is looking here at the home, you can also create a plan for your office. You can create a plan for your office, because the four of us, the two of us, you could create a plan for your studio. What happens when you come in here? What are the protocols that we will use to keep ourselves safe? Because you see, for Zero, this talk people on Facebook and all over about the government and the government and the government. The government has a role. But the greatest role that I have seen, especially in the research, outside of a vaccine, outside of preparing a hospital, is behavior change. That is the greatest change that we will ever see. And so when you create this plan, you must create a plan to keep yourself safe. So for example, I tell people all the time, your mask. I could use the underwear analogy, and I will speak about men. We know what it is to wear very uncomfortable underwear. You vex all day, whole day vex, because you have to keep moving, shifting, and all those kind of things. Now, what I have recognized is, if your mask is uncomfortable, you will be touching it, shifting it, moving it all day. And so one of the first things that I'm asking you to do in your plan is to get a mask that is comfortable to you. Get a mask that fits you well. Because if you have a mask that fits you well, you will no longer need to be shifting, moving, and turning. I also want to encourage people who are in high traffic people or money to wear a face shield in addition to your mask, so you will not touch your face often. And all of that for you becomes part of this plan that you will create with your family. I literally want you to sit with your family and create this plan. I want you to sit with your colleagues in your office and create this plan. And I am not talking about an agency or a company-wide plan. I am talking about your plan within your circle of control. Because that is where we will begin to be. First here, I am telling you, and I heard the CMO said this yesterday, if we do what we need to do in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in 1 month, we will see a reversal of these numbers.
Well, if I could just interrupt you, Mr. Benjamin, we could deal with that in a moment, but we do have to fulfill those commercial obligations and get to the news at the top of the hour, and then we'll have a few minutes still to talk about that. Are we seeing that behavioral change? Are people slowly but maybe surely coming around to that realization that it is our individual behavior and responsibility that will win this battle over COVID-19? But we'll get to that in a moment. But because we want to give you something to smile about as well while we're talking about these very serious challenges that we face, here's an image submitted by Well, it's already 7 minutes after 7 o'clock in Trinidad and Tobago, so let's not waste any more time. Let's go to the final part of the tutorial that is being given to us very kindly by Hanif Benjamin, clinical traumatologist, to take us through the coping mechanisms in this time of COVID-19. Mr. Benjamin, you have the floor once again.
Thank you, Fazir. And we're looking at slide number 4, which is promoting cognitive behavior change. And Fazir, let me tell you something. We change behavior with persuasion. Right? Persuasion can go 2 ways. Persuasion can go legal or punitive or social learning behavior. And so if you notice where we are as a country, we are going in 2 ways. So the government is going the way of ticketing for not wearing your mask, imposing this and imposing that. So that's a legal, punitive type of way. But we also must go, and they give us a chance to go in the social learning type of way. And that is what I want to encourage people to do. Now, when you look at promoting cognitive behavior change, and the reason why I told you all about the customized safety plan, because changing a behavior can occur with repeated patterns over and over and over. The more you do it, the more you get accustomed to it. And so what simply I'm saying to people this morning is when you look at what needs to be done, when you look at all the things that has to happen, you want to have repeated. And that is why the information out there, I notice you giving the numbers for the health. I notice certain social responsible people are having advertisement about COVID-19 and stuff like that. And so what I really wanted to show and what we will further develop is understanding your risk, understanding your individualized risk, understanding your risk to others, understanding your circle or your power of control. What do you control? How do you control it? And do you really have control in all areas? And you plan for that area. So you create a plan for all of those areas of control in your life. And that would have been slide 3. And now on slide 4, we are looking at a customized safety plan, which encourages behavior change. Because if you plan and you carry out your plan and the people in your circle encourages, motivates you to keep doing what you need to do, then we will change a behavior faster. So everyone in your circle must be encouraging. You remember? Each one teach one.
Yes.
I want to say each one reminds one. So I need to always remind you to do what you need to do. You must remind me to do what I need to do. And if all of us understand our individual risk, if all of us understand where we are as an individual to others, if we all understand our power, our circle of control, then we can plan for wearing your mask. You know you need to put a mask in your office, in your car, in your bag, because you need to get accustomed to it. You need to get a comfortable mask so you don't keep moving about. You need to understand how staying at home. Do I need to go here? Do I need to do this? And these things need to be put in your plan, written for everybody. Social or physical distancing. Is it necessary for me to be in this meeting, whether we can do Zoom or other things? So for you, basically, what I am saying to people is, If we understand our individualized self, if we understand our own risk, if we understand our circles, if we understand the plan and create a plan, we can change. Now, we need the government and non-government to be part of this, because we need constant, frequent messaging over and over. Every advertisement, everything coming from the government should be about COVID and how to keep yourself safe. Every social factor in terms of companies need to be beating this with their employees on everywhere. The television station need to be pushing messaging, because only when we have consistency and frequency, we will then begin to change our behavior. So everything needs to work in tandem, and that is why the circles are so important. Because if you understand your control in those circles, you can plan for it. If you can plan for it, you can prevent. And if we do these things for zero, we will see a rollback in those numbers, because then we are making a deliberate attempt to protect ourselves and our circles. And if you make that deliberate attempt, you will see a change.
Mr. Benjamin, we really thank you for taking the time to, and I know it's taken a lot of work and a lot of research, and we really appreciate you, as per usual, showing your level of commitment, essentially to service to the country, by taking the time to prepare this dialogue with us this morning. And we thank you very much for taking the time to offer us this very valuable information once again. Thanks very much once more.
Always a pleasure for you. Thank you.
Hanif Benjamin there providing us with that tutorial. And again, in case you